Hey, everybody, welcome back. I am Emily Moyer and Doctor, that's right, Doctor, second episode now under the doctorship. Dr. Sonia Barrett is here with me for episode number 36 of The Human Game. And today we are going to talk about both an old and a new article that Sonia have written, and it all kind of encompasses the overall energies, behaviors, sort of stuff in the air with all of the current goings on. So Sonia, welcome back. Nice to see you.
Hey, thank you. It's always good to chat with you, Emily. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. So we had so many good responses on the last show we did. If you remember when we talked about the sleep paralysis.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, people really liked that one. So I'm always happy to chat with you. Okay, I think you and I, this is the 16th episode of this, but we did a couple of shows with Randy before we started this series. I think we've done about 20 shows together now. So
right.
It's a lot. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the inspiration for this show was you reposted last week an article from 2014 that I was like, oh my God, that is so perfect and relevant for now. And then since then you've posted another article that I'm like, oh, and this one is so perfect. This one is actually from now. You just wrote this one.
Right. Yeah,
so I think we're going to actually go with the new one in the public hour. And then in the patron segment, we'll get into stuff around the older article, but it's all kind of connected. So hopefully it will flow nicely. But I wanted to sort of start out and do the public segment talking about your new article, The Fine Line Between Being Positive and Hiding Fear. And I think that, you tend to write articles when you just had enough of something somebody's doing or something everybody's doing. So tell us sort of what happened and what was sort of the impetus for writing this article, and where are you sort of going with this? What is your intention with this?
I sort of felt that, and this is ongoing, but I think particularly now, it's like people who they want to be positive and about whatever it is that's going on, or maybe it has nothing to do with the situation right now, but just in general, because it's sort of this protocol, Emily, particularly in the movement, in the New Age movement, to make sure that you're following protocol of positivity. In the meantime, a lot of people are struggling deep down inside. And it becomes this lie, that people end up telling to themselves. It actually becomes more internally damaging. So I was looking on at that. It's like, maybe if you say something to someone, oh, this is so ridiculous and crazy what's going on. And then they come back really quickly with something positive, just for fear that you could say something negative that could interrupt, somehow create this cloud of negativity around them, because they're so scared and just wanting to protect themselves from any negativity coming at them. In the meantime, the only reason why you can feel that way, you're so cautious and so nervous about somebody, bringing negativity, is because of your own deep down fears. And so I was looking at that. It's like, well, what are you really afraid of? And that to me became a really big thing. And I thought, let me talk about this, especially for all those people who would like to just be able to exhale, go, oh my God, thank God I don't really have to do that. Because people do that, Emily. They need permission to not have to do this protocol. Then you can go back to being positive, but it's a positivity that really stands on a sort of a no fear ground. And you're okay with seeing the bigger picture instead of trying to hide from the big picture because of your fear. And that drives, I saw the way it was actually driving people right into the thing that they so are trying to avoid. So that's why I wrote this article. It was an article of freedom for anybody who wants to just let go and go, you know what? I just want to own all of this. I want to say how I feel. I'm scared. I'm this, I'm that. And then you get to deal with it. And then you can go back to a level of positivity, because you're standing on a foundation now of more trust and power, self-empowerment. I hope does that explain it?
Yeah. So, okay. So I'll just, for people, I'm going to link to the article in the description box below. And I recommend that everybody go read the article, sort of maybe even push pause right now and go read the article. It's not too long, so that you can sort of actively, at least in your mind, participate sort of in the conversation and see sort of where we're coming from with this. So, you know,
Did you want to share screen on any of it?
we can share screen on some of it. That's like, I have it open right here.
Yeah.
So we can share screen. And of course, the most important part is the lovely picture.
Well, that's the reason why I did it.
Of the doctor.
And then I put words around the picture so I wouldn't seem conceited.
Right? That was small. It's a good tactic. Make like the picture very small and off to the left, right? Better off to the left, because if you get to the right, you might be accused of being a right winger, right?
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I gotta pay attention more.
Right.
Placing my pictures.
So yeah, it's not too long of an article. So I recommend people should go read it. And I think, like, you know, there's the whole, you know, it's not too much fluff here. It's just pretty much, you know, gets right to it, which I appreciate. Like, there's some people I read, like, their articles are like, take 25, 30, 40 minutes to read. And it's like, they could have summed it all up in, you know, 5 to 6 paragraphs. So thank you for summing it up in 5 to 6 paragraphs. I appreciate it.
And Emily, maybe not right now, but when you go further, I think there's a part there that I think is worth reading. Ooh, scroll up again. Yeah, it's where it says 24. Where is it? Scroll
I got
up
it
again.
yeah
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
I really think that the part where it's saying about the questions that fear asked, I think that is really, really important for people to really see. But how does positivity serve us when used to cloak our fears instead of a state of positivity that is based on a true acceptance of what is being presented? If you can read that section there.
I actually think this midsection here, I think it's paragraph.
Oh, okay.
But like 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's short enough.
It's short. Okay. So there is often a chant for positivity, which may lead some to feel guilty or inadequate in not living up to this positivity protocol, especially among the spiritual or the awareness community. To observe what is occurring before us doesn't automatically create negativity, as is the dreaded avoidance. The avoidance may include the observation of personal experiences along with your external observation on a global scale. To become overly cautious about being positive can actually drive one to the very thing that you are working diligently to avoid. For one thought to be held, the polar opposite must also be true, or at least a possibility. Both options are possible. We are constantly in this polarization swing. It's good, it's bad, it's black, it's white. We sound like Michael Jackson now. It's positive, it's negative, it's dark, it's light, etc. So because of this, there is discomfort in finding center, or of being able to see things as they are with the level of acceptance. But the desire to judge into one extreme or the other often lands us in avoidance or in the safety of positivity. But how does positivity serve us when used to cloak our fears instead of a state of positivity that is based on a true acceptance of what is being presented in the moment? What fears are showing up for you or for me in that moment, requiring our attention? Fears want to be dealt with, and that is why it rises up in our faces. Your wish is my command. Fear asks the question, where do you want me to go? Where do you want to place me? Do you wish to disguise me? Should I pop up again in 5 minutes or in 24 hours or in 20 years? What would you like to do? This is much like the upgrade or reboot messages we receive on our phones and computers. It will not simply go away until you select an option. And often if you don't select an option, the system will automatically begin the process. Right. So I think the whole thing is good, you know, and the whole thing is good, but I'm going to leave some for people to read sort of on their own. But, you know, there's something. Okay. So we have two situations going on, and I don't know how these strange bedfellows of communities ended up sort of in like a weird polyamorous relationship, right? And where you have the spiritual community, and then you have the conspiratorial or the truth community. And then there's this bleed over, like there's definitely the Vesica Pisces, right? Where there's the area where they intersect. and then each opposing side is trying to extend itself into the other circle, right? And so you have this, you have exactly what you describe here, which is people who, like, especially if they're new to, or even if they're really famous or big or long time in the new age or the ascension or the spiritual community, that they feel the need to maintain a raised and elevated vibration, or to like speak the words that, like, you know, say all the right words, or to be in light, or to, you know, all that shit, right?
Enlightenment protocols.
But you mostly see, so you see the people who are like high ranking in that system, who feel the need to continue to portray that publicly, even if in private they know that that's bullshit. They're putting on a performance and they do something different. They need to maintain it publicly. And then you have all the new recruits into that system that like are trying, just like when you go to a new school and you're trying to figure out how the popular kids act, and you're like buying those clothes and saying those things and liking that boy and doing whatever, right? So you have this thing where, you know, they're trying to assimilate into that Borg. And if somebody accidentally says the wrong things, which in this case is merely pointing out reality, suddenly you're banished to the corner and made to feel like, you know, you either don't belong here, or you're somehow broken because you're, you know, not able to delude yourself well enough to float into the room like everyone else does, or, you know, whatever it is. So you have that on one side, right? And that's a very real thing, and is really like annoying. It's always annoying. It's always annoying. Let's face it. Like, there's never been a time where that appealed to, at least for a person like me and a person like you.
Yeah.
There's some people that like that, because there's some people that come from that since childhood, where their mother was like all about their child had to look perfect all the time. Like, we didn't go to church because we really believed in it, but we did it to make dad look good for his business, or all that kind of shit. Right.
Right.
So there's that. And, yeah. And then there's the flip side of it. And this goes to like the truth or the conspiracy community, in which is like, somehow you're how awake you are, at least to a certain point, is gauged by like how black pilled, or how fucked, you know, we are. Right. Like, to the point of like, where, you know, like I was having this conversation with a client the other day, that like, you know, I've had sometimes people in comment sections, if I say anything ever that implies that like maybe not everything in the world is staged or fake, right, then somehow like I'm being fooled by the same propaganda and whatever, and that like, sorry man, but like, you know, once you're really awake, you recognize that everything is fake. And so my question to that is, well, if you're that awake that you recognize that everything is fake, what are you still doing here arguing with me in the comment section of my video? Right? Like, you're still like, you know what this is. You know, to a certain extent. Now, sometimes these people are very polite. And so I'm actually happy to engage these conversations when people are polite. Sometimes they're not. But to my point is like, you know, we're all, no matter how positive you think you've been, that you've ascended to some higher level, or how black pilled you are, that you can't be fooled by the system because, you know, everything is fake. You're still here. You're still watching the video. You're still in this system where we have these corrupt, no one has gone. They're not gone from here.
They're still reacting.
They're still reacting. So so on that flip side, it's like, if you're not negative enough, you're not recognizing reality, right? Kind of thing. So if you're not, so my observation is that not everything is staged or fixed, because things happen that I'm not expecting every day.
Right.
And at this point, like, we've all done enough research, and we know the codes, and we know the gematria, and we know the lingo of the false flag and whatever, that there should be no surprises for those of us who have been researching this for a really long time. Right. So if we just make the observation that like, okay, well, the birds are still chirping and the sun is out there today and it's a beautiful day or whatever, that's somehow sufficiently not recognizing the dire situation that human beings are in, because our overlords have, you know, perpetrated this massive whatever kind of thing. It's like the same thing in opposition to the you have to be positive thing.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it's like there's a loyalty to fear on either side. They just don't realize that's what it is. So they are selling fear, but they in their minds they're selling awakening. But at the same time, in order to awaken, they need to make you afraid as well. So,
but it's the same thing though.
it's the same thing.
I have found that like so during, particularly dysfunctional period of my life, I was super negative. I thought like everything was insurmountable and da 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 da. And that was definitely covering up fear of like going out and trying to do whatever it is I wanted to do here irregardless of what the control system or whatever is doing. That like I was afraid to go out and to fail, and I didn't have to go out and fail because I was saying there's no point in doing anything because the whole system is rigged anyway. So that protected me from having to take the risk of taking avoidance. Right. Kind of thing. And then the thing that you're talking about with the positive thing is the same thing too. I don't want to recognize, it's just reverse. I don't want to recognize reality. Like there's some awful thing happening right in front of my face, but I'm going to either look the other way and say, oh, but look, it's pretty over there, or try and make up some very elaborate excuse as to why this bad thing is actually a good thing. Like I hear some of these a lot in the new age community, right? About how like our enslavement is really good for us because it's causing us that, you've heard this kind of shit before, right?
Right. Yeah. I think what it is, we've talked about this, and of course I talk about it. So I do talk about how to find opportunity in everything that's going on. Okay. So that's very different than this other kind of positivity, just this woo woo, this is all good for you, but not allowing the person to truthfully own how they feel, like they're miserable or they are afraid or any of that. It's just throwing them into this sea of thought, of positivity. But yes, what you're saying about both sides, either way, there's fear. Both sides are afraid, which is why they need it to be on that track that you're talking about, on that track of everything is fake and that kind of thing, and you're not awake if you don't see. I've seen some of those posts before where people are talking that, and all I see is fear. That's all I feel at that moment from that person is fear. This also allows people to not look into themselves. I mean, more than anything, that community, a lot of that community that is external, always, you don't know what's going on. It's all made up, it's all fear. This is what they're doing to us. What do you see when you hear that? If you step back, what you recognize is that person is saying nothing about their own internal transformation. Everything is about what's going on out there and who's doing what to them. And this game, in order to expand or evolve from this game, it requires us to connect truly with ourselves. And we're talking science. We're not talking just woo woo. You got to turn your own self on. You got to turn your own machine. That
sounds pretty kinky, dude.
Well, either way, you got to turn yourself on. However you want to turn it on, but you got to turn your own technology on. It has to happen because everything is coming at the technology. It's the technology that is processing the information of fear or whatever it is. It's this vehicle. So if it's not activated because you don't want to be in the driver's seat, but rather become so external, then you're going to get taken over. What do they say again in Star Trek? You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. And that's what I mean why it pushes you towards the very thing that you're running away from. You become sucked into the Borg system without realizing it. So yeah, so resistors like me, Emily, people like us, there's resistance with a centeredness. There's a balance. And that's what people have to understand. It's not resistance with this polarized thing where we got to lean to one side or we lean to the other. It's resistance with an awareness, with a centeredness. That's what we're talking about, not that crazy swing. It's got to be out there, it's got to be black, it's got to be white, to whatever extreme. Centeredness allows us to be able to see more of what is actually going on, because it becomes less personal in that sense. You don't get sucked into the game, but you get a chance to become more of an observer. And this game requires one to be an observer, like an objective observer, where it's not your body that's so involved, the 3D aspect of yourself, but to be able to step back and to observe the game, you get to see more. But you can't see it when you're so busy in the woke, trying to be woke and wake everybody up, and nobody knows what's going on. And, it's all fake, or oh, it's just positive. Let's just look at that and just raise our vibrations. You ain't going to raise anything if you don't allow yourself to look at what's actually before you with the game. It's a game. I keep saying it over and over for many, many years. It's just it's a game, multi-level, so many different levels to it. And it confuses people, because you get caught in these different little pockets of the game, and you think that you're moving, forward and upward, but then you just get caught over there again in a pocket. So being able to be more centered and recognizing that position, how it gives you, what do they say? It's like a bird's eye view, gives you a better view of what's going on.
So what you're talking about, this happens a lot when you're sort of in your awareness journey, like you're awakening your awareness, you're finding however you want to term it, right? Like you discover a truth or something you believe to be the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Or come to understand is the truth. And, mm-hmm. and like you try that on for size, and you're in that for a while, and then eventually you learn another thing, and that other thing may be very interesting and be true also, or seem to be true
in the moment.
There's something substantial about that thing that is diametrically opposed to the truth that the prior thing exposed to you. And so now you're in this situation of trying to reconcile these two issues, topics, realities, ideas, awarenesses, or whatever. And the process that you're talking about, where it's like we just like don't recognize reality, we'll pretend we're positive, it almost turns into the thing that like whichever one feels the best, or whichever one allows us to navigate our current reality most smoothly,
right?
Sort of just subscribe or assimilate into that without doing the work of trying to reconcile or whittle away the contradictions between your perception of the two things, because the two things may not actually be in contradiction with each other. It's just your belief in them, the way that right. You have invested, the way that you have sort of taken that on is
fragmented.
And so the thing that you're talking about is to say, you know what, like there's something about this and there's something about this. And I don't know what these having both awarenesses mean. And I find that kind of scary. So like, and sit in that of not knowing, is this one true or is this one true? Or is it possible that they could both be true? But in order to hold both of these things simultaneously, I'm going to have to become more nuanced in my thinking, less judgmental of other people, less fixed to a certain idea of reality, and so on and so on and so forth. And that's a process that it takes time. And sometimes that time isn't that long once you sort of submit to it, right? And sometimes it is long. But that thing of saying like, for this period of time, I'm not going to be sure of something, that for some reason is terrifying to people. Everybody wants to know exactly what something is right now.
They like the certainty. The unknown is just for all these different ways. The unknown is something that human beings fear. So we rather have something than nothing, and then we get to attach to it, and because there is so much personal work involved, I believe that's a big part of it. And I get it that most people don't want to do that kind of unveiling of self, mm-hmm. Removing of the layers, and let's face it, these layers that we're so scared to remove are the very things that anchor us to the game, to the network as it is, which makes us more vulnerable to any kind of suggestions coming from these external systems, because you don't have your own balance, your own anchoring. And I think another thing too, when you were speaking of truth, that's something that people are so, why do you get so worried about that? It's like what you know right now, like what I know right now, what Emily knows right now, in whatever it is. Okay, it's true right now, but we are open to the fact that that truth can evolve. We're not attached to it, because we want truth to evolve and to expand and to show us deeper layers of itself. No differently than reading a book, and we can read this article that we read today, and we can read it 5 years from now or tomorrow, and then we see like all these other layers, like with anything at all. You see all these other layers, and so it is with everything. So truth as you understand it to be right now, accept that this is what I believe to be a truth right now, but I am open to seeing the deeper levels or expanding of it. But you have to give yourself permission for that. Then you get to see. So it's not a matter of, oh, they were just wrong and you were wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. You close yourself off and then you go, well, that's not possible. This is my narrow interpretation of reality, and that's what I'm sticking to. You do that, and you should, what do they say? The Bible say, you shall surely die, because there's no expansion.
Listen to Sonia quoting the Bible, right? There you go.
The Bible. That's right. You know what? Because there's no expansion in there. There is nothing to suggest to your being. I'm not going to go there, Emily, but there's nothing to suggest to your brain and the rest of your body that there is any reason for you to be here that much longer, because there's no growth. Growth is about allowing the expansion of truth, of possibilities, of not limiting your perception of reality, whatever that may be, politics or whatever, to any one narrow function. The system, or those that govern this political system and, beyond that, they count on, and I use the word bank on, because there is emotional currency involved, but they bank on the fact that that's what people will do. They will attach to a belief, one that they would like for you to attach to, one that they have streamed, and that you will commit to it, and that you will stay there. And so therefore they keep throwing more stuff at you, and it sticks, it works, because you haven't given yourself permission to see a bigger picture. And that's how we get sucked in. The end.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So as we're talking here, like there's a couple, so you wrote this article just this past week, right?
Yeah,
and
2 days ago.
2 days ago. And right now we are in this Ukraine thing, right?
Yeah.
The
new war matrix. Mm-hmm.
Some of what you're talking about right here, what we're talking about in terms of like people being committed to this like unnaturally and undoubtedly untrue positive perception of everything, or others being committed to this like almost cartoonishly ridiculous negative perception of everything, and then everything in between is playing into this situation in Ukraine. One of the things that I find super interesting is this article that we're covering in this segment you wrote this week of this year, right? And then the article that we're going to cover in the patron segment was from back in 2014. Well, we also had a go round with Ukraine in 2014. And the other thing that started in 2014 was this latest upwhipping and round that's gone on since then of these sort of protest movements, right? We had what was the thing in Ferguson? The Ferguson thing, that was in 2014. And that was really when Black Lives Matter started, right? So that was
interesting. That's interesting, because I didn't even, when I pulled out the article, you know how that works. I wasn't even connecting the dots then. That was the year 2014, which happens a lot anyway. I'll pull out an article and it will. So
2014 and now we have this this unrest in the Ukraine, right? And then 2014 and now we had really big protests, like the start of a really big protest movement. Back then it was Black Lives Matter. And now we've got this sort of trucker, whatever this is working on, becoming both things, elements of both things, whether it be the Ukraine in both circumstances or these protest movement in both circumstances. elements that are obviously orchestrated and controlled, elements that appear to be grassroots and genuine, and then everything in between, right? Elements of, when it goes to this sort of Ukraine thing, like I feel like the thing with the Ukraine actually matches what we're talking about here in this segment. And then the protest stuff, what we're going to talk about in a second, but it's interesting that they all overlap time-wise in these ways with your articles. This thing with the Ukraine, this is one of the craziest things. I literally have no idea what the truth is and what to make of it. and
It's crazy.
Right? Like, and this is the part that's the craziest to me, is you have people out there who are like, this is fake like everything else, right? Kind of thing, that this is all, fake. And then you have other people who are like, no, this one is real, right? Like this one is real kind of thing. And you have this scenario where there's a couple of people coming out and said like, well, it's actually the mainstream media lies about everything, but they're telling the truth this time. And the people in the alternative media are getting it wrong and missing it because they're so used to being able to rely on just opposing the mainstream narrative to find the truth. And we've moved into, and this is something that COVID did really well, was move us into another layer of complexity where that formula doesn't really work anymore, right? But I mean, the way that the thing that's generating the most amount of questions about this situation for me is simply the overwhelming amount of propaganda about it. News articles, right? Like I have never, not even during 9/11 or Sandy Hook or even coronavirus, gone to news pages and not been able to find articles about anything else but Ukraine. I have never experienced this before. Like literally, I had to. You'd think for how controlled we have been by a narrative around a virus for the last 2 years, I'm having a hard time finding any article about the fact that the federal government dropped the mask mandate today, or that New York City is ending that, or that the CDC finally acknowledged that they've been hiding data. There's no reporting, even from the alternative, even on alternative media sites. It's all Ukraine all day, right? And so to me, like that's the big operation, is just overwhelm people with information so nobody knows what's true. But to me, like this one is sort of insane. And we're also getting like, I'm seeing a lot of different kind of arguments amongst people who like to think of themselves as awake or aware or whatever right now. It's kind of crazy. What does this look like from your point of view? And how does what we just talked about in terms of like the commitment to either being positive or the reverse, but exact equal, like sort of your negative view of perception, preventing people from like seeing what's in front of our faces? And even if you are not doing either of those things, like right now, I'm having a hard time understanding what's in front of my face. And so I'm asking wise sage Sonia, who looks great, like when you show me a picture of you around a fountain like that, I'm like, that's the portal to the other world in there. So you tell me what you see, Oracle Sonia.
Don't tell everybody that, because I don't want them going to that portal over there. Yeah, that's a good question. Simple. I don't know. No. Every year at the beginning of the year, and we're still at the beginning of the year, I always point out, and you look at old articles where when I started pointing out these trends and theme that start the year. And I think if we can just step back from it and not even really honestly try to get like super involved in it and engaged in it, you can see truly that this is just another trend and theme right now for this year. Now, COVID was a theme too, but it took us into 2 years. So but in those 2 years, there were other concepts, trends and themes that were embedded in that. So they got a whole lot out of that one theme, right? So now that's wrung dry, right? They've gotten everything out of it. There's nothing left. So that's the reason why you're seeing where it's almost like people aren't noticing that they're suddenly dropping all these things. Like they're setting it all aside to focus on the new theme. And that's basically what I see. I have not really gotten into it per se like that, because I am stepping back. I have stepped back and I have looked at it from that perspective of, oh, okay, so this is the 2022 theme that's going to unravel a whole bunch of other little, Russian doll type things. And then that'll run through probably to
Are,
January.
are you a Putin apologist? Russian dolls instead of Ukrainian dolls?
Oh, sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I wasn't even thinking that. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like so far removed from the madness. I was like, oh, did I say Russian dolls? That is funny though. But yeah, it's so to me, I see that is the magic of the game. Is the magic of the game, because if you try to figure it out like that, you will get the biggest headache, because they have created such a mishmash, and they haven't even we haven't even seen mishmash yet. They've created Find Waldo, which you cannot find, because you will not be able to see any of what thing is really true. Who's at fault? Who's not at fault? That's the design. And as we can see, the part of the theme for the last 2 years is major division, major categorization of people and division of people, which is super necessary for whatever it is that we're moving into, this age that we're moving into, in terms of not just technology, but technology, yes, but the system's ability to manage the populace requires all these different divisions and categorizations and confusion of people. So this is what's going on. This is now just another level of it, especially with the political arena for the United States and elections and so on. It's all meshed together. Where we're going to see the results of this, it's come time for the presidential election. That's where we're going to see all kinds of stuff pulled out and more division of people, because they're going to use this moment in time with this situation, with this war, to be part of the bargaining and for people's votes and people's minds. So does that make sense, Emily?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's what's being prepared right now, and people are so invested in being outside of themselves that it makes it easier. So for whatever is coming, the world that is on its way, that is really here, but in a bigger way, is going to require less people to be aware and conscious on a level that is not manageable, right? So they need the majority of people to be manageable, to be even more manageable than before. And they already know that there's always going to be a few people that aren't manageable, but not enough for them to worry about, because they have trained the populace so well that they won't have to worry about the populace that's manageable listening to the people who are unmanageable, like me and Emily. There's not enough people who are going to listen to us. So it doesn't matter. But there's a reason for wanting the populace, not just here, but globally, to be manageable for the systems that are coming, which again are more virtual, more, all of that. And I mean, we could go into so many areas with this, but it's a different kind of system, a different kind of game, then new level of the human game that's coming, just like it's always done, Emily, over the however many years, millions of years that human beings have actually been around, regardless of what they tell you about thousands of years. Human beings have been around for a long time, and the game has just changed in these different intervals. And who we are now is a product of whatever that last major shift was. And so here we are in this other big shift. We're here witnessing history and part of this big shift in the machinery that's creating what 20 years and 30 years is going to look like. Because you have these set versions of reality that's set enough for generations to operate in a similar version and interpretation of reality. And that lasts a while. And then it shifts again in a bigger way. So I hope that makes sense to people. So that's where we are right now. We just happen to be witnessing and in the midst of it. And how you manage this is to be able to step back and not step into the chaos and the confusion, because you're going to hurt your brain. You are not going to be able to figure out what's true, and you're going to lose friends and be divided. You're going to play into the hands of the very thing that they would like to happen. You're going to play right into those hands. And that's from religion on to politics, all the guiding platforms, all the platforms that are in place to always keep the majority of human beings in a set perception, in a prescribed way of thinking, so that the 5 people can manage all these people.
I think that's, and I know that you do a lot less following of like the minute by minute, day to day news, whether it's going for the mainstream or the conspiratorial of this situation. But I think that's the best.
I've been paying attention a little bit this time.
It's weird. Like I feel like I'm trying to, like there's part of me that has become numb and jaded to all of this and just I am whatever. And then there's another part of me that like, no, like this is a thing. And I try to read like 1 or 2 articles.
I do.
Opposing perspectives a day on it.
Yeah.
But you're not out there commenting on this all the time.
I stopped commenting. I said that last year that I was done. That I was done commenting on much of this, because the people who are paying attention really are people. It's like preaching to the choir. And the people who you would think would be the ones to be able to nudge them a little bit, they're not really paying attention. And I know I'm not going to say it on your show, but particularly right now with the administering of certain things, and people being really changed from being able to really decipher for themselves, like something switched off. So yeah, a lot of people are definitely going to have that. They're going to be so shut off that they're not going to understand or be interested in, what you're trying to talk about.
So I think some of that distance you've taken though gave you the ability to offer sort of the best analysis and advice, which is don't try to figure this one out because it's going to hurt your brain. Just sort of pull farther back and stay aware. But one of this thing this brings up is that
observe from a distance. Let me clarify that. You can observe, because I don't want people to think that I am just like pretending like it's not there. No, I get news breaks on my phone. Now, do I stop and look at it sometimes? I do, but here's the difference. I don't get invested at all. I am curious about what's going on in the game right now. I'm using my phone just to go, because that's what I do. I'll go, okay, all right, kind of interesting. But you're not going to suck me in, you see, because that's how it works. You're not gonna get my currency, my emotional currency. You're not going to do that. That's what's going always in the game is your emotional currency. How much can we gather? How much do you think it's just money? Our emotional currency is what's at stake, because that energy gets used for stuff that we have no idea what the heck.
Okay, I'm going to say something about that part in just a second, but to back to what you were saying about this, like for me, so Laura's constantly been asking me the last couple of days or week, like, what's going to happen? Like, what do you think is going to happen? I don't want this. Yeah, I read this article that says that if we go into this Cold War, it's going to cause this. Like, what, Emily, what do you think? And because she's used to me having an answer from having looked into these things. And I only thing I can tell her, honestly, with this one, I have not only with this one, like I have no fucking clue, right? All I can do is sort of look at it and say, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like, but I don't know. Right. And that to me, just being able to admit and acknowledge that I don't know, right? Like that's kind of a scary place for me, right? Because usually like I either know or I like, or
You
like,
can assess something, you can
right?
figure out the puzzle.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes even if I think I know, but I really don't know, there's some false security or false
There's some
safety.
comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is like, no, I have to just let myself sit, like go, like, I don't know. That's kind of a scarier place to be in. Right.
Right?
But it's okay. And
Yeah.
what it's leading to also is just like really like everything, not just this one topic. Everything is such a shit show, right? That all
Yeah.
of the things, all of the methods, all of our researchers, the things, all of the tools that we've developed over the years, they don't seem to apply in the same way as they have in the past to assessing things as they are right now. And so the only answer I can give to most things right now is I don't know. And it's a scary thing to say sometimes, but it's also the most honest thing to say.
It is, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. But I think part of the reason why that is that way is because you don't really need to select an option in the way that we normally like to select an option. What if it's not that? What if it's not about that? Because in order to know, you have to select one of those options. And when I say one of those options, oh, we're going to go to war, we're not going to go to war. I mean, it's that. And so that's what I mean by not being pulled into the game. It's like it baits you. Come on in, and select one. Now, if we get all crazy, right, in the sense of reality, if we really start going off of you're going into other things, right? And we start looking on at it, that we start looking at the observer effect and we start looking at it scientifically, you can see something else. You can see that maybe the best course of action for me is to really know that I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's like my bottom line. It's like, I'm okay. That I'm certain of. I am certain of. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh yeah, well, I know I'm okay because I'm going to be in Timbuktu if something happens. It doesn't mean that. It means that what I know is throughout all creation, I'm okay. I couldn't tell you what that means, but I know no matter which way it goes. Okay, real quick example. Okay, so when I drove to Colorado, because I refused to fly. And it was a big deal, but for everybody, it was like, oh, you're driving by yourself. And I decided, I'm gonna do that 17 hours. I'm cool with it. I'm gonna ride. And in people's minds, they have this idea of danger and anything could happen. And so my conclusion wasn't really about, oh, I know I'm going to be safe. Because if that's my conclusion, like, oh my God, I know I'm going to be safe, that means I'm worried about not being safe. But for me, I was more like, yeah, I'm going to go. And I am trusting that however this is, turns out all is well. So in other words, if I got a flat tire, if all my tires blew out, seriously, it's like if all my tires blew out, and this did not happen, but if somebody decided that, oh, I'm going to pull you, I'm going to whatever at gunpoint, I was so like trusting in this journey, like whatever it is, apparently that's the journey, that's the route. And so for me, I was good to go. And being good to go with not having to select like, oh, I'm going to be safe and nobody's going to do anything to me, and not having to do that, it made everything just balanced because I didn't have to dive into any of those. And in my mind, create these polarities in my head. I just was like I was just in the moment with, all right, I'm going. However this turns out, I'm good to go with it. If we can get into that place, because that's how the game works. That is how these light particles, this is how this hologram, this simulation works. It's a feedback loop. It is always going to be a feedback loop, and it is going to respond to to what we are thinking and understanding. And that's where the fear concept comes in again, this idea of positivity, but you're hiding your fear. Can you step back and just know, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm good. And whatever it is, I'm good. House caves in, I'm good. That to me has been the magic of it all, with money, with everything, because then none of it really has to happen because you're not fearing any of it. You're moving through the game. You're moving through the game. And I know it's a big one for people, because that's not our programming. That's not our programming. Our programming is we have to react with danger, like be scared, like something could happen. Are you prepared? Do you have water and food if something happens? That is our programming. It's survival. We are programmed to survive. Our bodies are programmed to survive. Our 3D selves are programmed to survive. And that's why we want to know exactly what's going to happen in this situation, because it's about survival. Could you get taken out? Could you get taken out the game? It's like a video game. Could you get taken out? That's what we fear, being taken out the game. We don't know how, but if we're able to move into it, really, that's what it is that's ultimately always what people are afraid of, getting taken out the game. And the system knows that. Those who run all of this, they know that. That's why they've been selling death intensely for the last 2 years. Now we're going into this other leg. We think that the pandemic, oh well, that's over. Okay, but they're still selling death. Right. Now they're selling it in a different way. Now they've repackaged it and selling it. This morning, to tell you how, Emily, I saw, and I'm just trying to find it real quickly here. I saw, and I had to crack up because it was so funny to me. Now I don't think you've seen this, but here it is. All right. So it says, this is an article.
Okay. Yeah.
Biden administration says social distance, wear a mask while sheltering.
I saw that yesterday. I was reading that to Laura as we were in bed yesterday. I was laughing.
God, it's so funny.
Yeah.
That's where we have to go with it, because that's a suggestion. That's a suggestion, a psychological suggestion. That's more death fear. Oh my God. So all these people, just think of all the emotional currency with all the people that did that. Now they're panicked. There are all these people holding their breaths for this possibility. So now that becomes the new conversation. That is like the dumbest topic ever right there, right? But they know that
it's most so people funny.
Are gonna take it. It was so funny.
It's so funny. Like to me, it was like I was like, wow, they're like, this is like, they don't understand how stupid this like their thesis, antithesis, synthesis. We could have the pandemic or we could have a nuclear war. What happens if we put them together? I know, a mask and social distancing, right? Like that's how we make sense of these two ridiculous realities, right?
It's like a lab.
So stupid.
Yeah, it's a lab. What if, like you just said, what if we mix the two together? Let's see what we get, boys and girls. And then let's see how people will react. So that's when I saw that, it like didn't freak you out. It was just funny and stupid. Yeah. How the hell do you social distance for a nuclear bomb? It's like, hold a second, please, nuclear bomb. Let me grab my mask and let's stand 6 feet apart. Oh, okay, now go. What?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like, it's so stupid. Well, we have to now step back, and that's what we have to do. When you start laughing at the game, when you find aspects of the game to laugh about, you start breaking that mess down. And we don't know, how many versions of reality, endless versions of reality. I know the version of reality that I am participating in. For me, I'm all good. Am I worried about all of that? Nope, I'm not worried about it. And I think that's what I'm talking about. It's a different kind of positivity. It's not positivity with denial. It's my foundation on which I stand in observing from a bird's eye view, the humor of the game, the insanity of the game, just looking on at all of it. And what do I say also in the end, Emily, is Okay, wow, that's funny. Okay, so what time is my next client? What do I need to do? That's what I do. What am I doing now? Okay, that's right. I'm doing these things because it's all about your world. In the end, it's all about your personal world. What are you doing? That's what you got to figure out. What are you doing? As opposed to spending time trying to stay outside in that version of reality that's created for your mind. This is where reality is happening, is in our heads. Pull back, people, pull back.
So, I liked sort of where you went with that whole thing, because what I was going to say was that what I told Laura is like, I don't know. And that's kind of scary. But all that I know is that the birds are chirping outside. It's a beautiful day. Like, I'm okay. Everything's going to be fine. And if it's not fine, somehow that will be okay too. You know what I
That's
mean?
what I'm talking about.
And I think some of that comes from, like, there was a time when that wouldn't have been true for me. Right. And how it's come to the place where it's true is having come to a certain amount of peace with myself, which is when you allow yourself to like deal with whatever fear or whatever comes up, as opposed to like, no, I'm going to override that with positivity, or I'm going to look for some very heady external explanation as to why the world can't be the way we want it to be, or whatever. So the work you do on yourself that equates ultimately to having come into peace with yourself so that you're going to be okay is what happens when you stop overriding fear with the fake positivity or the fake negativity.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really the bottom line of it. That's the trick of the game. It's a mind game. It's all a mind game. And when the more we're able to face ourselves, like you just said, the more we're able to go ahead and see ourselves, is the more those things kind of fall away. You realize that was all made up anyway. But you can't see that. You're so afraid of it, and you keep trying to bring things in to cover it, to distract you, that you can't really get to see it. You go right up in its face and you go, oh, wow. So this is just all really made up. And then it dissipates. Then it just kind of just breaks down and goes away. And then you get to move forward into something else. We have no idea and I'm saying it this way, just as a way to really connect with the audience, but you have no idea if your version of reality right now is just your version of reality where there's no war going on. What if there is a version of reality where this war broke out and it is happening, it is in full effect? There's so many things. There's so many different ways to see this. And, we can't push this aside either, because the more we understand about the science of reality, and it's not just what scientists say, but the more that we are able to reactivate or step back into those memories and more expansive parts of ourselves, the more we can see the game. We can see this, and we can see that there's just unlimited versions of possibility. And we are going to get pulled into one of those versions based on ourselves, who we are, what we believe about ourselves, and what the fear is that we have. So we go back to the questions that are in that article about fear. And I say, people look at that, and you ask, you allow those questions to be raised by fear so we can see them. Are all my fears gone? No, I don't go digging them up. But when they present themselves to me in the moment, you deal with the moment. You deal with the moment. What's presenting itself to you right now as a fear? That's what you work with. You can't pull up all your fears like that. You just can't. They show up at different times for different situations, and you deal with them. And when you deal with one fear, it's got tentacles. It is attached to a million other things, but you release one and you release so many more, and anyway, so that's what I want to share about that.
Okay. So the last thing I want to say, and this, I think, will transition us nicely into the patrons segment, is you mentioned a couple of times about how this paradigm, or whatever the sort of operations or activities are right now in this time, they're all about polarization, division, and sort of getting us to be emotionally invested in something. And someone is collecting that energy. And you said, I don't know what they're up to with that, but you said something like that. And one of the things that I'm wondering, as we move ever into this stage of expanded possibilities, both when it comes to their technology, but also what we can do with our own inner sort of holographic kind of technology. My opinion is that a lot of this is dependent on what is known as free energy, right? Kind of thing. And I think a lot of their technologies are ones that they have people all whipped up into a frenzy about, whether you're whipped up because you love that idea or you hate that idea, things like the metaverse or all of that kind of stuff, right? I think a way a lot of those systems are going to run are quote unquote on free energy, the energy that is created by the emotions of the people being polarized, right? When you look at batteries, there's the positive anode, the positive node and the negative, right? And this sort of friction between the energies is what creates the energy field. I think that's largely what sort of this augmented or projected version of reality, whether it be from a technological basis or people, if they learn how to allow themselves to feel their joy and their fear, but sort of keep some of that energy. I don't mean hog it to yourself, but rather than get upset in reaction to something the system is doing, right? When you actually feel anger or feel, allowing yourself to feel it, right? Collecting that energy, whether it be energy that we think of as like happy or more genuinely positive or the other way. And you then use those energy stores to augment or project the reality that you are creating amongst the same field that all these other things are being laid down on, right? And so whatever energy in reaction we give away to those collecting it will be used for their metaverse. But the energy that we're able to sort of store for use in generating the one that it could be for our metaverse, right? Does that make sense?
No, I understand clearly. So while you were talking,
You do it up.
I sent you a link for an article I wrote back in 2007. Energy is free. Are you? And it deals with the real free energy, which is you. So it's funny when you said that, I was like, well, there it is. I'm like, yeah, I'm like the TV show. I'm like, bam, there it is. It's like whatever you say. I'm like, I've written about it.
All right. So you're like one of those people who has a quote for everything. You just fucking have an article for everything. Right. And it's always from like a long time ago when the rest of us were totally dumb, but you were already enlightened.
Oh, it's so funny though. It's so funny because I do look back and I was like, I don't even remember. Sometimes I'll see somebody post something. I'm like, well, when did I write? I was like 2005, 2002, 2001. And so, but this one, yeah, I was like, that's the real free energy. That's why the suppression of free energy, it's you. So the article, and I haven't read it in a long time too.
Well, let's if we just simply read the opening statement, right? It basically sums up that which you and I just have been talking about for the last hour and 10 minutes. And you did it from way back then. I believe we can all agree that our common goal is freedom. Freedom is multifaceted and can be a very deceptive game. So we must first dig deep within ourselves to discover the true extent of our freedom. This journey is mapped in stages, both on an individual level and collectively. Each stage requires a new level of self-empowerment. Both self-empowerment and freedom coexist. So I pose the following to you, and on you go, right? So, so I will attach this article as well in the description, which I didn't. It doesn't surprise me that you were able to pull off that little party trick as well.
Well, yeah, it's deep. It is pretty deep because it ties into the idea of money. Why we need money, why money is a catalyst, because we've been disconnected from our realization of being the true current, the true currency. And so, yes, you have to have this concept of needing money to be able to operate, because it completely disconnects us from the memory of really being the free energy, of really being the currency.
Yep.
So anyway, so yeah, anyway, I think that's some of what the article probably goes into, because again, I haven't read it in a while, but I remember, and I was going to post it again. It's so funny. I thought about it a few days ago, and I was like, oh, I should repost that article.
Well, so this show will probably go out today or tomorrow. I'll link to it, but you go ahead and repost it tomorrow or something like that in your.
I'll wait till you post it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You can post it with the show or whatever too. Yeah. All right. So let's do this. Let's move over into the patron segment. We are going to take a look back at your article about the occult power of the individual versus the collective from back in 2014. And we're going to kind of look at it through the lens of what's going on right now with these various protests and convoys and the people participating in it and whatnot. If you want to join us for that segment, you can go to patreon.com/offplanetmedia or emilymoyer.locals.com. And Sonia, let the people know what you got going on and where they can find you.
You can find me, well, a version of myself on my website.
I know where to find you, but you guys only get a version.
You get a version, a holographic version.
Not a virgin, a version.
Okay, so it's therealsoniabarrett.com. You can go there, and it basically lets you know everything that's going on, articles and any workshops. All the workshops that I've ever done are there if somebody wants to purchase a workshop. And let me tell you, this is the reason why it's so challenging when people contact me or people say, I follow your work. And it's like, unless you've taken those workshops, I mean, the workshops, they are one after the other. They're not the same workshop. So anyway, so everything that I've done, that's why I record it, because I never do the same workshop twice. But therealsoniabarrett.com gives you all the information of everything that I'm doing, including Reality Wednesday, which is a free chat the first Wednesday of every month.
Cool. All right, guys, we will see you on the other side.